Welcome back to Asia's Analysis. So by now you have hopefully caught up on all the series. So we've had 3 series. We started out first talking about the coaching changes with the coordinators and did the offensive defensive comp scheme. So if you haven't caught up on that, go check those out. And then after that, we had the rookie camp series where we talked about the first round draft pick Sonny Styles and then the offensive rookies and their potential in the new scheme. And now we are in our 3rd series here where we are starting to get a little bit more into the building, talking about some additional position group rooms where coaching and staffing changes were made and how that bodes for us this year in terms of getting the most out of our players. And so hopefully by now you've looked at the Adam Peters profile that I did. You've already checked out the video on the tight ends. And so today we're going to get into the defensive line changes. And so I'm looking forward to this one because I was very excited about the Eric Henderson hire. Like when we hired him, I was like, holy crap, we got the guy that developed Aaron Donald. So yeah, let's get into it. So as you all know, that not only did we make changes in the tight end room, that was a little known change. I think we all came out of last season after 2 years of just failure in the front 7. We couldn't stop the run in 2024. Apparently, Joe Witt was supposed to be course correcting so that wouldn't be an issue. Yes, we had a lot of injuries, but I felt like Joe Witt traded off having the same type of defensive end in the room in terms of their technique and really got rid of all of our pass rushers. So he seemed to like the 5 technique, 6 technique type of edge rusher. That's not me saying that. When he talks about Dorrance Armstrong, he in the pressers will always talk about how he's a true 6 tech. And I'm like, dude, what? So unfortunately, we saw a drop off in our pass rush last year. And unfortunately, that drop off impacted our run defense as well. On top of the things happening on the second level with the linebackers, that's a whole different video. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Eric Henderson, do a profile overview over him. And then we're going to discuss a few of the new additions to the room in the edge room in Odafe Oweh, K'Lavon Chaisson, and the rookie Joshua Josephs, and take a deep dive into what we can expect from them this year and looking at their player profiles. And then also highlighting 2 players that have been in our system for a while. So that's Johnny Newton and Javon Kinlaw, and understanding that Eric Henderson is primarily here to help with the defense, with the development of the interior linemen. So we're going to start out by briefly introducing Eric Henderson and in his own words, and then doing a coaching profile overview.
Because you set those standards for yourself, and I'm just going to hold you to the standards of not only yourself but the commanders as well.
It's going to be an aggressive approach, but I feel like I'm more of a personal, genuine, energetic, but loving and passionate at the same time.
I love it, man. Good pad level, good hands. From the ground to the man. Oh, that double something serious today. Don't guess. Stay true to your technique, man. Stay true to your technique.
You can't be a dog without having those things. It's going to be a dog work mentality around here. Talk about guys having the discipline, the attitude, the work ethic, the grit, being willing to do whatever it takes to be great, obsessed with greatness, and relentless in our approach.
Dog pound on 3, dog pound on me, 1, 2, 3. Dog pound.
To achieve those things and then having that killer instinct to finish the job is what the dog work mentality is about. And I'm excited to see our guys take that full speed ahead. We have the right guys in here, and that's what I'm excited about. I think we have a nucleus that's going to take the league by storm. excited to work with these guys. They're a bunch of hungry guys with a lot to prove. And I think when you have a group and a unit that has that kind of back against the wall mentality, I'm the right guy for that job. Man,
I think we have one of the better groups in the entire NFL.
All right. So let's take a look at Eric Henderson's profile. I like everything he said in that video, by the way. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was his focus on technique, because my general observation in the eye test is that that's the discipline, like a technique discipline, on top of just Joe Witt's scheme, is a problem for a lot of the players in our front seven. So I am just really looking forward to seeing what these guys do with a better developmental coach. So let's talk about Eric Henderson, defensive line coach for that Super Bowl champion Rams team. And we saw what that defense did. We saw who Aaron Donald was in that system. So just, here with the Commanders, he is going to be responsible for the defensive line and be the run game coordinator. So he is here to help both, with the pass rush and stopping the run. So that continuity there and having someone who is proven in both is just, I am looking forward to it. So the Rams defensive line track record under Eric Henderson is that they were top 5 in sacks in 2019 and 2020. And we already know, if you haven't already checked out my defensive scheme comps, this is going to be an aggressive blitz heavy scheme where sacks are going to be the metric that lets us know how well they're doing. I'm pretty sure they're going to get a lot of turnovers in other ways, but the goal of the scheme is to generate sacks through a number of ways: simulated pressures, blitzes, stunts, mugged up looks, a lot of different things. And so that team tied a Super Bowl record with 7 sacks, man. So when I say sacks are going to be happening from so many places in this defense, not even lying, there seems to be, the one thing I liked about DQ, because I always talk about these head coaches that are CEO of buildings, I judge them by their coaching staff, because they are responsible for the coaching staff and just managing the game day and in the flow of the game. And so, they are going to live and die by their coordinators. So, to see DQ level up in the coaching staff in several areas, not just with the coordinators, but when you start to get in some of these position group rooms, there is a heavy focus on developmental coaches. And so it lets me know he assessed the situation the last 2 years. It's not just the player personnel talent issue. They seem to have a belief in their talent, and that this was the coaches not doing a great job developing the talent or maximizing the skill set of the talent. So he has 9 years experience. So he's an experienced coach, and it has done D-line exclusively. Some of his coaching philosophy is a gap attacking front. So penetration over 2 gap, uses alignment and stunts to win one-on-ones. And when I say this was the perfect D-line coach for a Flores system, because that is literally the scheme for the most part. Hand fighting and technique. So built around hands, leverage, and pad level. So Aaron Donald's endorsement is he teaches me a lot of things, right? So Aaron Donald even says that, this guy was responsible for the player that he was. And it's very interesting, because whenever I'm like doing my research and looking at some information on the different techniques and one Johnny Newton. And I think when they were doing the pressers early on before the draft, they were asking DQ, what player are you looking forward to having a breakout year? And he said Johnny Newton. And I think a lot of people just, again, slept on the position group hirings and didn't understand the context for why he's so high on Johnny Newton. I would be high on Johnny Newton if I had the D-line coach that was responsible for creating one Aaron Donald, okay? And so just understand that, he's brought in here to turn Johnny Newton into a monster and to continue the reclamation project that is Javon Kinlaw. So the run game ownership. So he held the NFL run game coordinator title since 2023. The Rams was ranked 13th in rushing yards allowed in 2023. So a lot of his defenses are very aggressive in the pass game and middle of the pack in the run game. And if you give me that, this is a defense that our stud quarterback can do something with. So the biggest thing he's known for is his development of defensive lineman. So he's not given superstars, right? He's usually responsible for developing mid-round and undrafted free agent talent. So I think a lot of people was talking about that big defensive lineman that they picked up as a UDFA. And the reason for that is they have plans for him. Even if that young man does not make the 53-man roster, I can foresee him making it to the practice squad because of his physical traits. And that is going to be a theme here as we talk about and get into this D-line room and the coaching, player evaluation, and a prospecting of this type of player in terms of talent. A lot of it is trait-based, right? These guys have things in their physical tools in their body that you can't teach. So a lot of them are at risk for going bust, right? And so I think a lot of times, we see someone don't pop early when they get drafted, and we immediately toss them aside and they're bust, and we move on to the next thing. So I think understanding that they got a lot of talent in here that's kind of on their second contracts in their prime to go boom, right? I do think with a lot of these guys, it takes some time, because they come from being raw physical specimens on college with not a lot of complex offenses that they're going against to come into the next level, and really having to level up beyond just their physical tools and leaning on their physical tools to actually honing in on their technique with their playing and scheme. And so it takes a while for those type of players to really make that jump to the next level. I think defensive linemen are equivalent to quarterbacks in terms of you have to draft them to the right place, or you will ruin their development and their future. And so we see it all the time. So, I understand a lot of people looking at Odafe Oweh and K'Lavon Chaisson. It was like, these are former first round busts. Like, I'm not really impressed with, I think after this video today, I might change a lot of people's minds about what you can do with these type of players with the right type of D-line coach and the right type of scheme. So again, he is responsible for developing mid-round UDFA talent. So Kobe Turner, third round, 9 sacks as a rookie. Greg Gaines, Ashawn Robinson, and Marquise Copeland. So Eric Henderson is here to elevate that room, but more importantly, they recognized that the coaching staff wasn't in. They turned over a lot of the coaching between the linebacker room and the D-line room. And I think the current assistant D-line coach was the D-line coach that they demoted. So, DQ was fed up. He was sick of it. He went out and he leveled up the coaching staff something serious this offseason. So before we get into the edge room analysis and defensive line analysis, the one thing I want to do is take a beat here, because I understand I have people coming from so many places, and even men may not understand the terminology and what some of this stuff means. So we're going to do a bit of a defensive front 101 type of break here in this video. And so, because when I get into my analysis, you're going to see me talk a lot about these guys' techniques that they play, their defensive line alignment, things like that. And so I just want to make sure we're all aware of what this stuff means. So defensive linemen are typically numbered from 0 to 9 outward from the football. So starting from kind of where the center is aligned out. So the even numbers, if a defensive lineman plays a technique that's an even number, this usually means they're head up face to face with the offensive lineman. So, or a specific blocker. If it's an odd number technique that they play, they are responsible for a gap. And I won't get into offensive line gap alignment, but if you hear people say A gap, B gap, C gap, there's usually the gaps in between the different players on the offensive line. So if you are an odd number player in your technique, you have a gap assignment, which most of the time is kind of where your pass rushers are kind of like, or your blitzers, right? So their primary role in that technique is to penetrate. So usually if you have a one gap penetrating, keep that in mind, or two gap kind of like read and react, or kind of like eating up the block type of alignment, you have different roles within the scheme. You have different things you're responsible for in the scheme. So understand we may be just watching, TV or watching the game, and we have an expectation that Javon Kinlaw is supposed to be getting all these sacks and getting to the quarterback. That's not necessarily true if he's playing a particular technique on the line. And so what we're going to see is that in our building, the coaching staff and GM and talent evaluators, they prioritize position flex. So that position flex all in every room, basically. Just like think of it like that. You got to be able to do more than one thing, because that's how the scheme works. They want to move you around the line. So DQ really loves defensive linemen that can play multiple techniques in the scheme. So before I get into this analysis of the edge room, I just want to say, keeping in mind, generally, even number alignments lean two gap. So you're head up and your job is to control the blocker. So think kind of sexy Dexy. You have to eat up blocks. And that is not, sometimes the metrics are not going to make those type of guys look good in the scheme. They're probably going to, have bad pass rush metrics if they're not, if they're like Tim Settle. Tim Settle is not, from a PFF standpoint, going to be a sexy pickup for us. He already knows why they're bringing him in here. We need you to sit right there in that middle and just eat up blocks so that we can get the one-on-ones we're looking for with all of the other players, right? So we have to understand and stop dropping names. Like, one of the things that really annoyed me in the Chris Long assessment is that he brought up Javon Kinlaw's name and just was like, it within the context of talking about our pass rush. And I was like, how do y'all know they're even using Javon Kinlaw like that? Because in his archetype and his body type, he's a nose. I know he can play all over the line, but what technique was he responsible for playing last year? Did Joe Witt have him as a nose responsible for just eating up blocks? Because if his job is to eat up blocks, I'm going to tell you right now, Javon Kinlaw did his job. A lot of times he was double and triple teamed. And that's why when you look at all the missed tackles he had in the run game, I'm going to shoot him some bail, because I don't know how you're supposed to be, stopping anybody when you got three guys draped on you. So, that's just something we have to be aware of, is that, let's be mindful of the techniques that these D linemen play. And then once we're mindful of that, we know what their assignments and what they're supposed to be doing in the scheme, right? And not get so caught up in this particular player didn't have a lot of sacks. Maybe within the scheme and the technique they're playing, that's not what they're supposed to be doing. So again, odd number techniques are usually your pass rushers, one gap defenders. That's their job, to shoot the gap. And then even numbers are kind of to hold blocks, and they have a two gap assignment. So they're there to kind of they have to maintain the gap discipline most of the time. They can't be moving all around and being undisciplined in the scheme. And that's going to take me to one Johnny Newton, because Johnny's so freaking twitched up that, if they can get him to just lock in on his technique and be disciplined, I think Johnny can be something great for us. So let's get into this defensive line room assessment. All right. So here's the edge room analysis, right? And so for the most part, we know who we picked up in the offseason. We picked up Odafe Oweh, K'Lavon Chaisson, and then we drafted one Joshua Josephs. And I think everyone was like, we have all these edge rushers. Why do we draft him? I think you'll understand when you realize that Dorrance Armstrong this is his last year on his contract. And I do believe that he is creeping up on that dreadful age of 30. And we know how our GM moves. Once you hit 30, you got to be willing to sign 1-year deals with us after that for you to stay in the building, because he's going to start pushing you down the depth chart and then prioritizing younger talent to get the snaps. And as a result, the multi-year deal. So I still think Dorrance Armstrong got some juice left in him, and that he can still be a starter for another team in this league. So I personally have Dorrance Armstrong going out on the open market, assessing his market and probably going somewhere else and get more money and more years. So they are succession planning potentially with K'Lavon Chaisson and Joshua Josephs. Now, I already told you, I believe the scheme is perfect for K'Lavon. I think K'Lavon is very smart. When he made a decision to come here based on his conversation and what they told him he's going to be doing in the scheme and what the scheme's going to be and how he's going to be played in it. I think he's going to get a lot of sacks. And I think he can renegotiate his worth with us, earn a multi-year deal because he's young. But there's several players that had to come off the books this year. So we locked Odafe in. And I do see an opportunity next year for K'Lavon to get a multi-year kind of deal with us. So in my head, and I'm not saying this is true, but this is just me reading tea leaves and how I would do it if I was a GM. If he pops in this scheme, he would be replacing Dorrance Armstrong as the other starting edge and getting a multi-year deal at the age of 26 for me. He'd get a nice 2-3 year deal to take him up to the age of 30. And then Joshua Joseph will be your situational pass rusher, replacing K'Lavon in what he does in the scheme. So they have a plan here, and it only works if K'Lavon decides that he wants to re-sign with us again next year. So that's why you see me only covering Odafe, K'Lavon, and Joshua, because I think the scheme is going to feature them more than some of the other edge rushers in terms of who's going to flash and who's going to pop. So let's do an overview. So Odafe, career sacks 30.5. His career high was in 2025 or 2024, which was 10 sacks. Career pressures is 234, career tackles 176, and 7 forced fumbles. And so these are guys that in the right scheme and right coaching, they have the archetype and physical tools in their body to just wreck games. They can. So you have to harness them, and they have to play. They have to have the right schematic fit and chemistry in the defensive room. And I need folks to understand, I think front offices and buildings mess up edge rushers more than they do quarterbacks. Those are the two position groups where I just think that they don't understand what they're doing to set those two position groups up for success. Because it's so, their skill, they have to be in the right system with the right coaching. And so just a bit of a scouting profile on Odafe is that he's a bell cow speed to power edge. So he had to bulk up. So that's probably why we saw him kind of take a while to get to this point, because he was undersized. And so, you gotta, for him to fit the different archetypes for the different techniques that they play, they have to be at a certain body type and body size. So he had to kind of bulk up a little bit. And that's when you saw him pop in 2025, because he finally put that weight on. So he was able to kind of add the power to the speed to power. So his conversion of his 4.36 speed, so he's fast. So Odafe's fast. He's like quick. He's a twitched up dude. But when you're light in the britches, you can get washed out on your pass rush and when you're going up against the tackles. So you have to have the speed and the power, a la Micah Parsons. So he had a 17.3% pressure rate, which was ranked top 20 NFL edges in 2025. So when everybody's running around calling, oh, this is an overpay, this is an overpay, they are projecting out. And next year, just based on how he's going to operating this scheme, it's going to look very smart because they got ahead of the market and they locked them into a multi-year deal. And it's going to not look like an overpay by the time he's at the end of this contract. So I think, understanding that we at least have Odafe locked in on a multi-year deal, we're starting to build a core in this defense. And so his PFF pass rush grade of 78 was 17th amongst all the edge rusher, confirms that his breakout was real. So he is truly on an upward trajectory, right? That is what free agency about. You go out and you find the guys that are kind of like projecting up, right? And so him in this scheme is just, I'm really excited for Odafe. I think the scheme is great for him, and he's going to continue his upward trajectory. He's going to be able to prove to people that the money that we gave him was worth it. Now, K'Lavon Chaisson, his career production is 17.5 sacks. And again, understanding the type of technique that K'Lavon plays, he's a pure pass rusher. So you had to get it right with him in terms of where you used him and how you used him. And he's not a 4-down edge rusher, right? And so his scouting profile is he has an explosive first step as a speed rusher, right? So 3 straight career high sack seasons. So again, he's on an upward trajectory. So, 2 sacks to 5 sacks, and then last year, 7.5 sacks. And so it's not bad for a rotational pass rusher. Remember, K'Lavon is a rotational pass rusher. He's not a 4-down edge, So he led the Patriots in pressure 73 and added 3 sacks in 4 playoff games. He was a game wrecker for them. Odafe was a game wrecker. So we got 2 game wreckers. So he's on a late career trajectory at the age of 26. So K'Lavon is the one with all the research I've done on this scheme, because he works best when he can get one-on-ones. And I think this scheme is built out to get him one-on-ones. So I was like, oh, he's going to eat. Now we have Joshua Joseph, the freak. And I know that this is a developmental prospect, and he's going to see the grass. Now, how often he sees the grass, I don't know, but they're going to find a way to get him in there and get some one-on-ones, because he's a freak in terms of his wingspan and his speed. He is a long, twitchy, developmental rusher with a NBA caliber wingspan and vertical and 1.68 second 10-yard split. He's just an athletic freak. Like you have to draft the guy like this. I already told you, when it comes to these techniques they have to play and what they have to do, listen, you can develop a rush plan. You can lock in and help them with the fundamentals, but what you cannot develop or teach is a physical trait. And so you literally have to draft this guy with knowing you have an Eric Henderson in your back pocket to develop him. So Joshua Joseph's, I know he was mad, he slid, but sometimes God works in mysterious ways, Joshua. So listen, this is the best situation you could have ever landed in. So, it's going to work out for him. So a day one role projects his special team primary. I don't know how they're going to use him, if they're going to use him on special teams. But when I thought about him, I said, I can see Devontae Jones with a few packages to use him on 3rd and long, just to like have him go up one-on-one and just like bull rush a tackle. And because he's good at strip sacks, like he's a turnover machine with those long arms. So they're going to figure out a way to get him in there. That you just have to. You can't no developmental. Sometimes you just got to put these guys in and just rotate them in certain packages just so that they can get out there and play, right? So he doesn't have to play on every down. He's not ready for that. He does not have a rush plan. He is all just kind of like athleticism and chaotic violence, right? And so you do have to hone that a little bit, but I like that on the 3rd and long. So on an all-out blitz where everybody's coming and he's getting a one-on-one, I like it. He also plays the Leo, so he has the ability to kind of drop back in pass coverage too, in the flat and cover tight end. So yeah, no, these are the guys that I am really excited about in this room, and I think they're just going to flash in the edge room in terms of sacks and disruption and just really being the game records that we're looking for. So with that, being said, now everybody talking about who's the guy. They still don't have an elite edge. Who's the guy? Who's going to be the guy? Who needs a guy when you have three? We got three of them things, y'all. We don't need a Trey Hendrickson, and I'm not denigrating Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, or any of those guys. I like having more than one. Do you not understand the amount of mileage that you put on a defensive end when they play the number of snaps that a Trey Hendrickson or a Myles Garrett plays? And you cannot be aggressive throughout the entire game. The way you call the game with that type of edge rusher is very situationally, in terms of you have to preserve them, you have to save them for the end of the game. It's very situational in how you can use them and harness their aggression. At the end of the day, they're using so many edge rushers in so many different ways. You can maintain the level of intensity of that pass rush, and it doesn't matter because you got three guys. They are rotating them out. They're going to be fresh. And so, the motor, you just maintain the same motor throughout all four quarters. So that is why I fundamentally do not like having one pass rusher. I give me several in that mid tier, and you can let Trey Hendrickson go somewhere else. If we would have had to pay Trey Hendrickson a lot of money in the cap to the point where he's the guy and that's it, I don't think this is a successful defense. I don't. Because it's okay. Now, when the offensive people come in and they're looking at the scouting report, okay, we got to have a plan for how to deal with Trey Hendrickson. Now you come in and you like, well, you got Odafe, K'Lavon, and then they got this Joshua Joseph's kid. And don't forget about Dorrance Armstrong, because he was on a career trajectory before he got injured. So it's like, how do you prepare a game plan for all these rushers that can come from anywhere, anytime, and they're quick twitch guys with high motors, with speed to power element. Like, it's going to wear offensive linemen out. And then you pair that with a very physical, violent run game. They're going to wear offenses down. It's going to be all about attrition with our defense for the most part. And so, let's take a look at kind of their rush plans, projected snap shares, their alignments in the scheme, and what we can project from a floor to ceiling in a Flores type scheme for these players. And so Odafe Oweh is your bell cow edge. So he is kind of your 4-down edge, right? So he has really kind of developed a clear rush plan to where you can keep him in there and he won't get washed out by the tackles, and he can, use his rush plan to kind of like consistently get to the quarterback. So he does not require for you in the scheme to set him up for one-on-ones, right? So, his alignment is that of a wide 9 and a 5 tech versus the right tackle. So his pass rush plan is he uses the speed to power conversion. He again, he had to get his weight up, and that's probably why you guys didn't see him pop early, because he was a little light in the bridges. I think he was like 240 something pounds. So he put on 20 pounds. He's about 265 pounds now, where he can now convert that speed into power. He has the 2-hand swipe and ghost rip up arc, and I've seen it on tape. His rush plan and just his technique is so beautiful to watch if you just watch it on tape. Like, he is clearly working from an IQ standpoint. He is not just all chaos with him. You can see him working a clear plan when he goes up against the tackle. So, that's why he's able to consistently win and get to the quarterback, is because not only does he have the physical tools and aggression to do so, now he has a clear rush plan, and he's more with the IQ with it than the physicality. He has a spin counter versus overset tackles. So his best deployment is all downs. So that's why he got a 4-year contract. Okay. Because he's a starter. So if you're trying to figure out who's playing, he's a starting edge He's one of our starting edges. Just pencil him in the depth chart as a starter. So he's the guy on the other side of Dorrance Armstrong. So you use him on all downs. You anchor of the base front. So he's the anchor of the base front. He lead versus slide protection. So in a Flores scheme, you're gonna isolate him 1-on-1 in 6-1 looks. And again, if you go back to my defensive scheme comp, I talked about how in the Flores scheme they use a lot of heavy fronts. So the heavy front does not allow for a lot of it confuses offensive linemen in terms of, it's the whole point is to try to manipulate to get the one-on-ones with key people in the alignment. So he's going to do well. So his sack range in a floor scheme, if he plays the projected snap share, which is 70%, his floor is 8. So if he just plays average and doesn't do well, he can give you 8 sacks in a Flores scheme, which is not bad because who do we have giving us 8 sacks last year? But if he really blows this scheme out and really ascends in this scheme and flashes the way we expect, and if Daronte Jones is truly him with the pen and the mind that, because this is why DQ went out to go get him. It was, I need the scheme to do more to set the players up. And so, his ceiling is 14 sacks. So we're talking about Odafe Oweh. If he plays to his ceiling, he'll get 15 sacks in the scheme based on just his trajectory and where he's headed. Now let's talk about K'Lavon Chaisson. So he is the speed complement. This is your true pass rush specialist. You just send K'Lavon in there and you move him around and you send him. If you're going to use him as an edge, you're going to use him as a wide 9 or a 5 tech, but you can also kind of move him around and kind of use him in a blitz too. So there's a lot of versatility with K'Lavon. I've seen video of him where he also kind of function as a Leo sometimes, and he reads really well. He knows when to pull back, and he can get interceptions and things like that. So I have K'Lavon out of all these edge rushers. I know people was online in their feelings about him saying that, they have Jaden. He's smart. He anticipates having an offense that is consistently going to be in games where he's going to get his snap share because he understands he's not a 4-down rusher. He's used situationally. So he needs to be in the right place. And I think he's had a point thanks to David Mulugeta. David Mulugeta has a lot of edge rushers for clients in that he seems to be advising them correctly and pushing them to the right spots to maximize what they do in terms of helping them kind of pop in their career and get their money. So this was a good landing spot. And if you go back and watch his YouTube video, his agent, you can see his agent kind of nudging him to the Commanders. And it was a good look. He did his research. He knew what we had going on over here with this scheme. So, if he's got an incentive-based contract, I think K'Lavon can hit all his incentives. And I want us to pay him. I want Adam Peters, if he hits his ceiling in sack range, just pay the man and secure him for another 2 years. Just maintain the continuity, because y'all know how Adam, he'll let somebody walk in the open market if he gets to haggling too much. So, but K'Lavon's projected snap share is a little lower than Odafe because, again, he's a situational rusher. So they're going to use him situationally. But, he's 55% of projected snap share is not bad. So this is why you saw he got a 1-year deal and Odafe got a 4-year deal because Odafe is a 4-down edge. So his pass rush plan is first step burst around the tackle. He has a dip and rip and corner bend, and then the inside slant on stunt game, so tight end to tackle pick. So yeah, like I said, using them as stunts, this is where K'Lavon coming to a creative defensive scheme, they'll use him in so many different ways as an edge rusher. So he's gonna get home, So his best deployment is on early down speed and third and medium closer. So he's a stunt partner with Javon Kinlaw and Johnny Newton on twist concepts, which the first stunt they run with Johnny and K'Lavon, them two twitched up freaks. Oh my gosh. Like, I feel sorry for whoever's responsible for the blocking assignment. It's good luck. So the sack range for K'Lavon is, his floor is a 6 sacks and then his ceiling is 11 sacks, right? So, as I said, you can get double-digit sacks from your two edge rushers, and then one Joshua Josephs. Now, this is kind of the guy that I just feel like, because of his freak athleticism and his speed off the edge, you got to find a way to use him. Like, you just have to. You got to get him in there a couple of times a game. And just send him. Like, don't even let him think. You just tell him, you get in there and you just go, right? So I do think that Daronte Jones is going to find a way to use him. I think, so his projected snap share, if he gets in there, is 25%. And I'm only saying this because, pardon me, that's my phone scaring me. So I'm only saying this because Flores used a rookie. So Flores, they rotated a rookie into that rotation with Grenard and Van Ginkel. So I do feel like Joshua Josephs would get some opportunities because, I think that's just the philosophy. So he is a designated rusher. That's all he does. He just goes in there he's a weak side edge. So the weak side edge is usually lined up on the side where you don't have the tight end. And so it gives him the most opportunities to get that one-on-one most of the time. So I think in the alignment, they're going to strategically be using him to kind of manipulate the alignments in the front so that he can get that one-on-one. And if he gets that one-on-one, I think he can get there every single time. I've seen his tape. So he is a Leo. So Leo is kind of a linebacker edge hybrid. So in his stance, he can stand up like the linebackers, or he can get down in a kind of like 3-point stance like the edge rushers do. So that's kind of what that means. So he's kind of an edge linebacker hybrid, which again, listen, I've said it once and I'm going to say it again. I understand Daronte Jones is going to be pulling from Brian Flores. But when I say his personnel acquisition and his drafting around this scheme and the talent, it's better than Flores. And so I think he can get way more creative in the scheme with the personnel he has. He has so many position flex players that he can do things like the linebackers alone. So every time I think about it, I'm like, what is Daronte Jones going to do with all these athletic freaks? Like, what is he going to do? You can concoct any type of nonsense. And the Flores scheme is all about chaos and not making sense and unpredictability. So it's literally, you don't call a game traditionally in a Flores scheme. You just got there and you do stuff, and it just has the offense so confused. So I'm super excited when I think about what he's going to do and how he's going to deploy all these players. So his pass rush plan is that, and he's a third down specialist. So his pass rush plan is that he's long arm with elite reach. So he has an 82-inch wingspan. He has pure speed off the ball. He has a 1.68 split. His get off is crazy. And then he tips passes via lengths on stunts. And so that's why I think they're going to use him, because he's so long. And they're going to have him in there confusing people. They're going to send him, make him seem like he's rushing, but then they're going to pull him back and he's just going to stand back there. He's going to tip balls at the line of scrimmage. He's going to float back into the flat, and it's the Van Ginkel. He's got 3 Van Ginkels. He's got Leo Chenal potentially as a Van Ginkel. He's got Joshua Josephs. He can deploy like a Van Ginkel. And then once Sonny gets, I still don't know what they're going to do with Sonny, but Sonny can be a Van Ginkel. So yeah, you are not going to be able to figure out what's going on in this scheme with these players and combination of players and how he's going to deploy them. And so just for the edge group, the rotation ceiling for these 3 guys is the minimum number of sacks is 15. And the combined sacks in the group, if they kill it in this scheme, is 30. I think they're going to get more than 30 personally. And these are not even team sacks. This is not even taking into consideration sacks that's coming from the second level with the linebackers, and then the sacks that the safeties and the corners might get. So this scheme is shaping up to be super aggressive. He matches a top tier solo rusher with rotation depth. So his rotation depth is crazy for his edge rusher. So the 2024 NFL sack leader, Hendrickson. So 1 sack. The work you're getting out of 3 guys, and you get to keep them fresh. Hendrickson had 17 and a half. Hutchinson verse. You saw what Myles Garrett did last year. They are like those type of guys that y'all, their names, but you want us to go out and get one guy to try to give you this productivity when you can get this productivity from a lot of different places. So a 3-man rotation absorbs injuries and keeps fresh legs into the 4th quarter. All right. So this is why you got to get 3 guys instead of 1. All right. Now let's talk about this interior D line, because this is kind of I understand people when they say I need to see more from Johnny. And then I understand when people talk about Javon Kinlaw like he's a bust, and it's, but interior defensive linemen are very difficult because of what they're asked to do in the scheme. And I don't think their production happens in an isolated way. So I think this is the one position group that is like how their productivity and their stats and their metrics, it depends on what's going on around them. And so I think last year we had no pass rushers. So teams like, okay, we just going to come out here and play your interior defensive linemen like they're there to stop the run. And so, they took our interior D line out of what they wanted to do because the pass rush help was not there. So I think just the scheme and the injuries I can't even hold it against our interior linemen. They were out there. Like, I was in the building watching the games live as a season ticket holder. And it's so hard to play interior linemen, man. It is. You got bodies draped all over you. They take the brunt of all of the physicality. It's tiring. And so, I just hope this year we have more depth and that Eric Henderson can help these guys kind of lock into their technique and the developmental profiles and things like that. And we get more out of them than what we were able to get last year, because I'm just throwing last year away for the interior defensive linemen. I think they were the only group that really didn't have any injuries, but they were heavily impacted by all the other stuff going on between the second level, just playing like crap, and, all the edge rushers being injured. It's like they start to overcompensate and then forgetting about their techniques and not playing to their assignments. And then that's when you see kind of the failure, of that group within that context. So Kinlaw and Newton, their numbers didn't look good last year, right? So, they had 17 games, 43 sacks for Kinlaw. 43 tackles, sorry. He had no sacks, no pass rush juice, just pressure, couldn't get, And I already told y'all, Javon Kinlaw was like, there would be if you put the camera on just Javon Kinlaw, a lot of times he had 2 or 3 guys draped on him. He was like the big guy in there eating up everything. I just don't know how he's supposed to get sacks and stop runs when on every play he has 2 guys on him. And he never complained or made excuses. He was a dog the whole time. So I think people are too hard on Javon Kinlaw, because I think if you watch the tape, you understand what he's doing and how much attention he kind of draws. So, his pass rush win rate, the metrics are there. I'm not even going to get into them. They're pretty bad. But I contextualized those metrics. So then, I started to look, and a lot of people felt like this was an overpay. So, but at the end of the day, they gave him $30 million guaranteed. So it's essentially like a 2-year, $30 million deal at $15 million a year. And if you look at the interior lineman, kind of where that market is, the market is higher than that in terms of pay. So he's actually paid less than most defensive linemen. So he's paid like he's a reclamation project. This was not an overpay. But I think you guys just see y'all see numbers and just don't have a clue what's going on in the market. Y'all don't benchmark. Y'all just see a number and then go, that's too much to give that player, because we are not millionaires. We don't make the kind of money these people make. So to us, it just looks like a lot, but y'all got to slow down and benchmark to other players And this is about, he's getting below market value here. So we got Javon Kinlaw undervalue for, where the market is for interior linemen. So I don't think if this doesn't work out, I think for me, it wouldn't have been, it's pretty much, I'm looking at it financially like it is what it is, but this was not an overpay. And so technically they can get out of that last year. So I'm treating this like a contract year for Javon Kinlaw, honestly. So I look for a big year from Javon is all I'm saying. Cause you know how players play when it's quote unquote a contract year for them. So the techniques he play is the zero. So he plays a lot of nose. And I think he was playing a lot of nose last year. And the nose tackle metrics do not be looking sexy, y'all. They're in there to eat up space. So he played the 0 tech, the 1 tech, and the 3 tech. And I think he started playing the 3 tech when we started having edge rushers kind of go. So he's used heavily as the nose versus zone runs, and shifted wider to 3 tech on passing downs. Yep, as I stated, they use him kind of as a 3 tech, for that pass rush juice. And then for the run, because of his size, they want him in there kind of, eating up space and in the 2 gap assignment, stopping runs. And so we got to figure out what's going on. He's so big. And so I think, they're going to work with Javon Kinlaw, and this is what's his developmental profile. He has a big frame. He's a big frame run defender with raw power, but pass rush production cratered. He has 0 sacks on 5 pressures. So he's locked in at a $16.2 million cap in 2026 with no realistic out until 2027. So there is the last year of his deal where we can be out, which is next year, that's why I'm treating this like a contract year for him. Henderson's reclamation challenge is converting strength into leverage and sustaining hand activity through the west. So I think Javon Kinlaw's techniques just he loses him in the game. He has to stay technique sound. And I think that's been the biggest thing on him his entire career. All the physical traits, all the tools, he cannot convert the physical traits and tools to sound technique. And so he's just got to lock in more technique. Now, I think he has always played for teams where he's had to do way too much as a lineman, right? Because everything else around him he's always compensating for the lack of everything else. And so he's not playing to his technique. It is my hope that now that he has some better players around him, they've got aggressive pass rush, they've got a scheme, that he can just focus on the technique he's playing and lock in on that and the fundamentals for that technique, and not, lose his fundamentals within the scheme, so to speak. So now let's talk about Johnny Newton. Now, Johnny Newton is on a breakout track, and y'all heard DQ say he feels like Johnny's going to have a big season, right? And when I look at Johnny's comps, it's crazy because his archetype as a defensive lineman is Aaron Donald. Now, y'all don't kill me. I'm not saying that Johnny Newton is going to reach Aaron Donald like productivity in his career and be Aaron Donald. That's not what I'm saying. When they talk about his archetype, they talk about his body. They're talking about his body type within the context of the technique he plays. And that's where the comparisons kind of begin and end. So he is a 1 tech, 3 tech penetrator. So I heard Deron Payne in an interview talk about Johnny Newton. He's like, Johnny Newton is twitched up. You have to harness him. That's the problem with Johnny. That's why we see him have a good game where he flashes and then he disappears, because he plays 1 speed, and you got to get him to kind of slow down and focus on his technique and kind of harness all that aggression somewhat, so that he's not, leaving his lane assignment too soon, or he's not playing outside of control of the scheme, which I do think sometimes that's why Johnny gets snatched off the field and he doesn't get the time in the scheme, because I think his discipline is not there within the scheme and what's needed. And the line moves as a unit. The line is one band, one sound. Everybody has to maintain their technique. Everybody has to play their gap assignments. Everybody has to do what they're assigned to do, or it throws everyone else off. And so Johnny is the type of player that like you want to put him out there, but he can throw the whole like group off because he's so like his energy. He's like, yeah, that was De'Ron Payne. De'Ron Payne is like, yo, he's like a bull in a china shop. Like they've got to harness him. And so he's a quick twitch interior rusher. He wins with leverage, hand quickness, and angled get-offs. So he played 17 games, had 38 tackles. Like, look at his sacks. Like Johnny can get to the quarterback. The only problem is sometimes we need you're in a stunt, Johnny. Is not your assignment to get to the quarterback. So you need to hold this block and maintain this, this gap integrity. And it's like Johnny I gotta get to the quarterback. So that's kind of like what you're dealing with Johnny. So his total pressures is 27. His career high was versus Dallas. He had 4 sacks in week 17. It's like boom or bust with Johnny. His year 2 sack growth was 150% year over year. So like, yeah, I understand why they are high on Johnny, because his traits and the archetype that he is as a interior lineman is crazy. Like he is rare, and that's why he was drafted where he was drafted. But we got to get the right coaching for these guys. Like coaching matters. And so hopefully Eric Henderson can get him under control and lock him in and get the fundamentals sound. But his PFF run defense, I told you, 36. He's 121st. Johnny don't know nothing about maintaining no gap assignment. No, he gonna penetrate every single time. It's like that's not what you're supposed to be doing right now, Johnny. Like no. So he don't understand run fit, none of that. He just got a head for the quarterback. But look at his pass rush. He's 41st out of all defense. So, that is why Johnny doesn't get a lot of snaps in the scheme, and he's still a rotational player, is because of, he's got to learn some gap discipline so that he's not a liability in run defense. You primarily can only put him in there in passing down situations. So that's why he's being used as a rotational player and not getting the high use in the scheme that we think he should. So the developmental profile, frame and play style mirrors Geno Atkins, Grady Jarrett archetypes. His pass rush grade jumped from 63 to 77 from year 1 to year 2. Look at his Dallas tape. He was a game wrecker. Like that, 4 sacks, 6 pressures on 27 pass rush snaps. Googly. That's why I said, like, I want a Johnny Newton, K'Lavon Chaisson. I want the interior line stunts, with him and K'Lavon. I want the interior line stunts with him and Joshua Josephs. Like, I want interior line stunts with Johnny and Sonny. I want, like, listen. My brain is just going so many places with how you can use Johnny and stunts with some of the other freakazoid athletes that we have in this front 7. Like, I just can't even slow my brain down thinking about it. So yeah, no, it's crazy. So that's why they're high on Johnny. Just understand. I know sometimes we be watching like, yeah, Johnny, I don't, I understand what coaches, when you sit down and you're watching tape and you're evaluating and you're looking at data like this, you have the aha moment and that, okay, I get it, right? It doesn't always necessarily translate to game day, but like, that's why we're viewers. We're not talent assessors. The Henderson fit. So the Donald tier development pedigree maps onto Newton's profile, right? So not saying he's Aaron Donald, his archetype type, and that pairing with Eric Henderson is a good fit for what he does in his development. And so they think this pairing of Johnny with Eric Henderson he's gonna flash and he's gonna have a breakout year. And then the floor scheme in the interior, they play, I told you, heavy front. So Bear and Penny are off these 5-man fronts where the defensive tackles are isolated in one-on-ones. The A-gap stunts and twists, the free 3-tech penetrators. So, the Vikings have a 38% pressure pressure rate from the interior. So yeah, the interior linemen are crucial to the scheme, even though the edge rushers flash the most and they look good on TV, but they're doing a lot of heavy fronts and doing a lot with the interior rushers. So yeah, you bring a Eric Henderson in so this entire thing can work, you know. So now let's talk a little bit about the undrafted free agent, Jeffrey M'Ba. And so, listen, if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, they're gonna stash him on the depth chart, on the practice squad. Cause yeah, they're going to let Eric Henderson just kind of work with this young man because, like I said, there are just things that you can fix technique, you can instill discipline, but you can't find these traits. The physical traits and tools these guys have in their body, they're hard to find. So we do anticipate that this is a developmental project for defensive line depth. So again, if Javon Kinlaw doesn't work out, you know, but it'd be nice if this young man in camp flashes and he can find his way to the 53-man roster and just imagine the amount of edge depth and interior line depth you have, and you can keep those guys fresh, and you can just send pressure whenever you want. You don't even have to be concerned about these guys getting tired or anything. So again, just looking at some information here. In 54 games, 134 tackles, career sacks 7, career tackles for losses 25, forced fumbles, career high in sacks in 2025 at 5. So he plays, the technique projected is 0 tech, so the nose, the 1 tech, and the 3-4 D end. So I remember Dan Quinn and his position flex and the versatility and the ability to move these linemen up and down the line. They like versatile linemen that can play multiple techniques. So his developmental profile is he has a massive build with active hands and a high motor. He's a strong wrap-up tackler. He plays too tall, so he's got to get his pad level down. So there's just some things that they have to kind of work with him on. He plays too tall, stiff hips, and he has an adequate first step. So he got a Senior Bowl invite, and then from there, he probably landed on AP's radar. And this feels very much like a Eric Henderson. Give me him. Like, Eric, which one of these guys do you want? And Eric was like, that one. So this is a developmental project for Eric Henderson. And remember, that's why, you know, we brought him in. So again, remembering Eric Henderson has made household names of mid-round and undrafted free agent D lineman with the Rams, right? So a lot of the guys they had over there, the Rams, these were not high draft picks. So and that was a Super Bowl winning defense, and we saw what they did. So the 53-man roster projection, the reason why I'm telling you guys to keep an eye on this guy in camp, because, you know, he's too much of a freak athlete that if they can get in camp him to demonstrate he can play on Sunday, or they can at least put him in there, I see him making a 53-man roster. You just cannot. These physical tools that these guys have in their bodies and the traits and things like that, it's just, you can't draft that everywhere. So yeah. So that is the wrap up on the D-line group with Eric Henderson. So again, I always have to close these videos out with, you know, what do you think, right? Do you think Eric Henderson is just what we need to turn things around with this interior line? Do you think, you know, Javon Kinlaw and Johnny Newton are going to have the breakout years we think they can have, and we're going to see that improvement? Do you agree with the sack projections now that you've seen the information? Like, I don't know, y'all put in your comments, how many sacks do you think we can get from this edge group? I'm curious. And yeah, so again, always closing out with gratitude. Thank you for the support. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.